Welcome to His Glassworks. We're going to do another, hopefully instructional video. We're going to set up the Cyclone Sandblaster. This is model 4826. It comes pretty much assembled like this, although before we started, I did assemble the light, which meant screwing in 4 screws. I think you can handle that. Inside here there was a bag that had the light, the fixture. There is no light bulb included. Your receipt, your handy dandy instruction manual. I'm going to be glossing over some of this, but all your details are in here. Keep that for future reference. You're going to find a foot pedal. Inside here is the pickup tube for the siphon blaster. There's also a hole in this. What's important is when you put your grit in here, you do not cover this hole. You do not slide that up over the hole. So before I move this up against the wall where it's going to be more or less permanently situated, I want to show you the back. It has this spring and chain that was in the bag inside. Mark opened the lid. Basically, this is an assist in lifting and also holding it open while you're working. We had to hook up the chain to the 2 legs there and stretch this chain just a little to get it through this one and on the chain. Not difficult at all. It took me all of about half a minute. So let's go ahead and close it. And while it was open, you could have seen the switch that controls both the light inside and also the dust collector when it's plugged into here. So one very important part of sandblasting is keeping the dust in there and contained so it's out of the atmosphere and you're not breathing it. This is the dust collector that comes with the Cyclone. Some of the smaller units, this is sold separately, but it's a 2-part system. In one part is the vacuum system, and there will be a bag. And when it comes, it's going to come with a hose, a bag, and of course your handy instructions. The hose will connect to this hole here. And you want to make sure that's firm and doesn't come out while you're operating. The other end of the hose, find the hole in this side, and that gets assembled into there. Now, setting up the dust collector, you're going to really need the instructions and make sure you understand them well. I've got a towel here I'm going to put on the floor just to protect the top of it. Don't want to get it all scratched up before it's time. Making sure the cord is free. Turn this upside down onto the floor. The next step is to put the bag in the lid, but you want to put the bag in the lid so that you can still see the nut. So it goes essentially inside out and over there. In the instructions it said the weight should be visible. The weight is just to keep the bag moving when it's turned on and off so that the dust collects in the base and not on the bag. Now this gets turned upside down, or right side up, onto the base, catching the bag like that. Now the next step is to clamp it in place. That's done with the spring. There's also a hole in the base. I tend to bring this around the long way and it just hooks into that hole like that, which will basically hold the whole unit together. And now for it to operate properly, you can plug it into the wall and it will operate itself, but this comes with this handy dandy multiple outlet plug So when the unit is plugged into the wall to the power, a light switch will turn on both the light inside the cabinet so you can see what you're doing, and turn on the dust collector. Now, on this end of the cabinet, beyond the door, you'll see an opening here with a piece of metal behind it. This is for the air intake for the exhaust system. So don't do anything that would cover or block this, or your dust collector will be useless. Now, with the foot pedal, this is going to control the air going into your sandblaster. It's going to control everything. You'll notice the foot pedal has this cool little black switch. There's also one here. It's a pressure switch, so when you step on the pedal, it will actuate the air. When the lid is closed, this will push on that, allowing the air to flow. That's a safety measure, so you don't have this open, step on the switch by yourself, and blind yourself with your blast grip. Okay, there are parts you're going to have to provide for yourself to hook it up. Obviously, an air compressor, an air line, a hose to go from your air line to the sandblaster. The unit comes ready to plumb into your air line. You can either directly plug into it or screw into it with your air hose, or you can use a quick connect fitting, which will be my choice because I always like to use hoses for more than one application. You want to seal the thread so you don't have air leaks, and you tighten this up. So with my preference of having the quick connect, I can now connect my air line to that and the other end to my compressed air tank. So, but before I do that, I have to connect this, the other end of this hose, to my valve here. Now, a couple aspects of the sandblaster. It's got a stainless steel surface to put your glass on for blasting. You can see inside there's a hook here and a chain that goes down to a little trap door on the bottom. There, I just moved it out of the way so you can see it move. This is for cleaning it out if you need to. So after you've used your grip and you think it's wearing out, it's getting too small, it's not doing what you need, that's a way to empty it out, and then you can add more fresh grit when you need to. The other important part is that this pickup hose be right down there near the bottom. If it's down here, it'll be in the base of the grit and it will always recycle. Now for this step, I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to be putting about 25 pounds of silicon carbide grit into the blaster. It'll fill up the bottom cavity from which the siphon will be able to pull the grit for blasting. So, goodbye. Now when you're blasting, obviously your glass will be sitting in here. I personally have an aversion to having metal rubbing up against my sandblasted glass. It tends to mark the glass. So this is something, my own personal preference and design. I buy a sheet of this open material. I get it at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's designed for fluorescent lighting. I cut notches and pieces off so it fits. I will slide that in, and I now have a surface that will allow the grit to fall through and generally does not mark up the glass. Okay, the working end of the nozzle, it comes with the ceramic nozzle. That's fine for the short run. If you're doing a significant amount of sandblasting, we also have available a tungsten carbide nozzle, which is extremely long lasting, gives you longer service and more control because the ceramic will wear away as the abrasive goes through. Much less abrasion with the tungsten carbide. Although it does happen, you'll be satisfied with a longer lasting nozzle. The other thing that is available are nozzles with a smaller hole. The smaller hole gives you the option of using a smaller air compressor or lower cubic foot per minute, down to 5. Getting into your sandblaster, you've already seen us open it this way. Bring your big piece of glass in here. There are metal bars, a lot of support, it'll hold a lot of weight. If you choose to, Clamp this down. Handy dandy little door over here. So you can feed in this way. When one door closes, another door opens. Okay, seeing what you're doing. Once you turn it on, there's a light, and obviously it's going to suck the fine dust out, but eventually your window's going to get blasted. You'll notice there is a sheet of Mylar attached to it which will protect the outer material. This is plastic. In some cases, if you wish, you can go to a glass company and get a piece of plate glass cut, personal preference. But with these 4 wing nuts, you can open it up, clean the glass, replace the Mylar, put it all together. There is a gasket in there to keep the dust from coming out this way. Just to reiterate, when the machine is open, this micro switch is not operating. So if you step on the pedal by mistake, you won't start blasting. But when you take your foot off, it does have a little relief valve down there. So that'll get your attention that you're doing something you shouldn't. Kick that out of the way until you're ready to blast. Now, last but not least, I'm going to show you sandblasting, as if you've never done it before. One thing that's important with this unit is you don't have your hoses stuck outside when you try to close it. So make sure everything is inside. Wear a respirator when you're blasting, and go to town. Well, once the dust settles, you can take off your mask and open it up and see what you've done. You may have noticed when I opened it after blasting, there's a lip here that caught the silicon carbide, the grit, and it just fell down like a rain. When you open it, you might want to pay some attention to knocking any grit that's on the lip back in so it doesn't get impregnated into the gasket. This is just housekeeping. So, having blasted my glass, the butter cut is very resistant to the blasting, but it is a one-time use. So when you peel it off, it's done. When I was blasting, much of the design I just gave a light blast to, but this area and this area, I selectively tried to blast very deep and long, and right here, I went almost 1/8 of an inch deep, very quickly. This, again, is 120 grit silicon carbide. The more aggressive the grit, the more quickly it will blast, and the rougher the surface.